Hello, YouTube. It's me. Welcome back to Heaven on Wheels. I'm not going to be talking about tools today. I'm going to be talking about coronavirus. I just realized I don't have my pointer. Jeez. I'll be right back. I'm not going far. Just a couple of feet away. Okay, here I come. So, I got my pointer so I can make a really professional video. Coronavirus. The end of the world. Is there anybody out there even to see this video? Aren't you all dead by now? It's amazing how people are panicking over this thing. I'll tell you how I found out. I didn't understand because my natural tendency, I'm a Christian, I pray, I don't worry too much about the future. I don't like to get caught up in herd panics. It's a very bad idea. It happens every hurricane season. They get on TV and these people lie to us and they say it's coming here, it's going there, it's category 5. And then you go and look at the actual websites and the radar and the satellite stuff and you see they're lying about everything just to get ratings. So I try not to get caught up in panics. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So I really end up far out of the loop. But it started to come home to me that people were losing their minds. A few days ago, week maybe more, I was at Winn-Dixie, and I was probably getting a ham hocks or something equally delicious. And I saw a lady wearing a surgical mask. Now, I live out in the country, and I believe the biggest city near me in my county, the biggest city is 70,000 people. Maybe it's less than that. So this isn't an epicenter of disease unless you include things like dying from eating deep-fried burritos and chasing them with light beer. Or from starting to smoke when you're 10. I mean, it's not like Wuhan province. It's not like New York. So I looked at this lady, and I thought, why is she wearing a surgical mask? And then it dawned on me, And I thought, well, maybe she's got some kind of immune disease or she's on chemotherapy. But, this lady had all her hair and she looked pretty sturdy. No, I'm pretty sure she was panicking. So I thought that was ridiculous. And I also went to Home Depot. Now, I saw all these things for several days. I would go, because I always have a lot of stuff I want to buy at Home Depot. I'm always up to something. And I saw stuff in the aisles, big, huge displays, Clorox wipes, bleach, all this stuff. And I was thinking, man, it's nice that they're selling this cleaning stuff. It's too bad I don't need any of it. And then suddenly something clicked in my head that said, panic. People are panicking. They think that if they bleach their entire homes that they're going to be all right, which is a little crazy. It'd be nice if people were clean all the time. Wouldn't it be great if people didn't pick their nose in the car and flick it on the floor and then shake your hand? Wouldn't it be fantastic if most men washed their hands when they use public toilets? If you're a man, you know this. You watch men leave the restroom, probably 80% of them don't wash their hands. I don't know what women are like, but women tend to be pretty filthy too. Anyway, suddenly people are obsessed with cleanliness, which is a nice thing. I used to live in Miami, and one of the horrible things about living there was every Hispanic woman down there thinks that she has to kiss you. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be her cousin's brother's friend, and she's going to plant one on you. And it always bugged me because you go to a party or an event and you end up with slobber dripping down your face and you can't do anything about it. You can't say no because they get upset. So it'd be nice if people were cleaner and didn't share food quite as much as they do and stuff like that. Southerners aren't too bad about that. People up north are pretty bad. I mean, a Yankee will drop an ice cream cone on the sidewalk and pick it up and eat it. And I know this because I grew up among them. So it'd be nice if people were clean. But suddenly everybody was excited about cleanliness, and I realized it was because of the virus. So I started reading about it, and I thought, well, this doesn't look too bad. And nothing I've seen has changed my mind. And I'm not minimizing it. If you get it, well, yeah, if you get it and die, then it's bad. Sure, it's terrible. It's terrible. Nobody wants to lose a loved one or oneself. But as epidemics go, not that bad. Didn't look that bad. And I thought rather than listen to the panic mongers on the news, one of the things I realized about them, by the way, was that anytime something bad happens in this country, they're going to play it up simply because Trump is president. They hate Donald Trump. They just can't stand him. It's so tiresome. The other day he said something he tried to say something optimistic to make people feel better. I mean, he said maybe this thing will kind of lift as the weather gets warmer, which was a reasonable guess for a layperson. It's a nice comforting thing to say because it's what happens with the flu and colds. And boy, did people jump on him. It was like he said, well, maybe if we just torture some kittens, everything will be better. It doesn't matter at all what this guy says. It's something he needs to realize. George Bush never understood this. George Bush always would try to sanitize his comments in advance. And it didn't matter because if he didn't say something that bothered leftists, they would sit down and make up something that he had said. Like the thing about the yellow cake in Iraq, the uranium war, which turned out to be 100% correct, where they would take something that George Tenet said and blame it on George Bush and say, well, Bush is a liar because George Tenet, who was a Clinton holdover, don't get me started. So a lot of people seem determined to think that this epidemic is worse than it is simply because it will somehow make Trump look bad. I don't get this at all. So, hysteria everywhere. People are buying toilet paper. Why are they buying toilet paper? What on earth do they think toilet paper is going to do to help them? Where did someone on a radio show or something say, you've got to buy toilet paper in order to not get sick? I don't understand this. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to wrap yourself in toilet paper and breathe through it and go around looking like the Michelin Man? What's your strategy? I know sometimes this illness causes diarrhea. I understand that. But there's no diarrhea on earth that requires 100 pounds of toilet paper or 50 pounds. When you get to that stage, you are going to die. You're going to be in the hospital in some kind of special bed that's rigged up to drain diarrhea into a bucket. Toilet paper is not going to be the answer at that stage. So I can't understand. I mean, if you're going to buy crazy things, why not buy protein bars and well, you're not going to need water. We'll still have water. I mean, what would you need? Food, I guess. Just buy normal food. But no, people are buying toilet paper and apparently 22 ammunition, because I went to get some 22s the other day, and they didn't have mini mags, which really upset me. So people are going crazy. They're going out of their minds, and I'm upset about it. So I started watching the actual facts, which you're not supposed to do. You're never supposed to actually look at the facts. You're supposed to listen to whatever they say on MSNBC or CNN. But I decided to look at the facts. I went to the Johns Hopkins website. Johns Hopkins, for those of you who don't know who the president is and don't know what country you live in and are typical products of American high schools, Johns Hopkins is one of the world's leading medical schools. Okay, so it's not the InfoWars School of Medicine. You know what I'm saying? It's not the Daily Kos School of Medicine. It's a real place. It's not a place staffed by people who work at health food stores. And they have a website there, and in real time it updates the known numbers of cases in the world. People who are infected, people who have died, people who have recovered. And they've been doing this for, 3 weeks or something. I guess they've been doing it back into February. So I started looking at it, and I started recording the results because I was writing about it. And the earliest example I can find was from March 5th. So what I found, I'll show you the figure that I found. And this is an approximation. It may have been 1,000 or so, more or less, but here it is. Okay, let's look at this big, scary number and shake for a minute. Let me know when you're done. Okay, that's the total number of known infections, including dead people and so forth, that existed in the world on March the 5th, according to Johns Hopkins. Now, there's some important things to point out. We don't know how well the testing is working, okay? But that really doesn't help the Chicken Little crowd. I don't think it does, because if testing has gotten better, that means this number is small, and the number we have now is pretty good, and that means the curve, when you measure the growth, instead of looking like that, is going to be more like this. It's going to be a less steep curve, and it's going to mean the transmission rate is lower. So, you can get into that stuff if you want to. It's not going to help you. Another thing is, if we're missing cases when we test, that's going to make the disease look less severe in the future. It has to. There's no possibility that it's not going to do that. There's no possibility that we caught all the cases. And there's no possibility that we have missed severe cases and caught mild ones. The severe cases are obvious because those people are dying and going to the hospital. So if testing gets better, we're going to find more mild cases. And while that may make the transmission rate go up, it's going to make the death rate compared to the transmission rate go down. And it's going to make the severity of the symptoms on average go way down. So that doesn't help you either. There's not much hope for you by complaining about the testing. So I looked at this number, and when I got done shaking, I looked at another number, and I will show it to you. And there's a number, which is bigger than that number. What is this number? Well, maybe it's the global flu case total for last year. Could be, right? Oh, wait, no. It's the total for the United States. So it's about 5% of the total globally. So this number, which is huge compared to this number, isn't really comparable to this number. Let's give you a comparable number. Now, I freely admit I have not looked up the actual number, but it's reasonable to assume that if America has 30 million, which is normal in a normal flu season, then the world is going to have somewhere, 500 million, 600 million. It's going to be close to that. I'll tell you something, people who aren't scientists don't understand. I actually used to be a scientist. I had a physics degree. I went to graduate school, and then I quit because I wanted to make more money and have a normal social life, and I was burned out. And so I became a lawyer, which is 1,000 times easier than being a physicist. And lawyers hate to hear that because they think they're the smartest people on earth. But actually, if you can get a history degree, chances are like 80% that you can be an okay lawyer. Doctors are smarter than lawyers. Lawyers hate to hear that, so I remind them of it. Doctors are smarter, but they tend to lose all their money because they invest stupidly. I know a doctor that gave $900,000 to a Nigerian. Over email, I guess. So lawyers get even in the end. But where am I? This is the figure. This is a big old number. Look how big this number is. And look how small this number is. Big, small. Say it with me. Big, small, very big, very small. Okay? Are you getting the picture? Now, okay, this is for an entire season. There's the big flaw in my argument, and this is for, this is for something that was still more or less, for the most part, stuck in China and hadn't had time to fully develop. Okay, big deal. Let me point out a couple of things. Let's talk about China. Let's just talk about China. What's the number of flu cases in China every year? Well, I'm not going to look it up because I'm lazy, but it's going to be something like this. Now, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 175, but it's going to be somewhere in there. And what I was starting to say a minute ago is a lot of people who don't have a scientific background, they don't realize that round numbers are very important and very useful. And another interesting thing that most people don't know, and they don't even teach you this in school, but you just figure it out if you're smart, is that a huge number of the precise numbers you think you know, aren't really precise. Like if you ask someone, like a little snotty kid who thinks he's the smartest kid in class all the time, some kid with a pocket protector, and you say, how far is it to the sun? He'll say 93 million miles, and he'll think, I'm so smart, I answered that question. But it's not true. The orbit of the Earth is an ellipse, so sometimes it's this distance and sometimes it's that distance. Aside from that, even if the Earth stayed in one place and you just tried to measure the distance, the Earth doesn't have a real solid boundary, and neither does the sun. I mean, the sun's a ball of gas. It doesn't have a set place where you can put a tape measure and say it starts here. So people who get obsessed about precise numbers, most of the time in science and engineering, they're absolutely unimportant, and round numbers are more useful, so shut up. So, more or less, where was I? What is this? This is America, this is the world, this is China. Yeah, okay, so China gets something like this many flu cases per year. The flu lasts more or less 100 days, 90 days. I'll be generous and say 100 days. And if you look it up on the internet, you'll see that's true. I'm not just making that up. Well, how many flu cases do you need to have a typical epidemic in China then? Every day. Every day. You need this many. Okay? Divide by 100. So, that's 1.5 million. 90 million. 1.5 million. I'm sorry, 90,000. 90,000. 1.5 million. Different. Okay? Different. The coronavirus thing started in China sometime last year. It's had several months, and it's not even scratching the surface of this. It's not even knocking at the door. In America, you're going to have this. That many flu cases new every day during flu season to have a typical flu season. So are you seeing the problem here? Per day, America, normal, global, pandemic over several months. These things ought to tell you that you're panicking a little bit prematurely. So, I hate to tell you that while you're lying back on a couch that's actually made of crates of toilet paper that have been arranged in a suitable fashion, but these are real numbers. These aren't things that are just made up. This number actually happened. Okay? So, I'm just not that scared of this thing. And you got to remember some other things. 80% of the people who get this disease get a mild form of it. Now that's right now with our bad testing. That doesn't include the people we're not catching yet. So it's a minimum of 80% get a very mild disease. It's not really even as bad as a cold. 80% of the people who get this disease don't even get a sore throat, which is the worst part of getting a cold. Do I have to tell you that? They get a mild fever and they get a dry cough. Sign me up. If I can have that instead of the flu or a bad cold, I'll take that. Wouldn't you? Who really has problems with this disease? Children? No, it's not going to get your kids. You have to be extremely unlucky for your child to get this. Almost nobody under a certain age gets this illness. And that's not just luck. There's some kind of reason for that. If there's some kind of physiological reason for that. Just like there was a reason why the Spanish flu mainly got young people between like 18 and 25. There are reasons for these things. So you can pretty much bank on that. The people who die from this thing, generally over 60, and it's not your healthy 60-year-old who sits around eating alfalfa sprouts every day. It's the guy who has his own chair at Burger King. That's who it is. It's the guy who's been chain smoking all his life. The guy who drinks a six-pack of beer every night. And he's more likely to be male. So it's terrible when anyone gets a disease and dies. It's a terrible thing. And it's terrible when thousands and thousands of people get a disease and die. But I'm not talking about comparing this disease to having nothing at all. I'm comparing this disease to the prognostications, which are crazy, and to typical diseases that are already going around and hurting people. The common cold kills something like 5,000 Americans every year. Did you know that? 5,000. I looked it up. And you may say, well, it's because of complications. I don't care. You still get a cold and then die because you got a cold. It's still a cold casualty. Chickenpox. Chickenpox still kills people, and it causes something like 5,000 or 10,000 Americans, I think it is, to be hospitalized every year. You can look into that. Not only that, but you can get shingles later on in life if you have chickenpox. And shingles is supposed to be one of the most painful things that can happen to you. It's right up there with kidney stones, and it's right up there with illnesses like kidney stones and childbirth, which some people think of as a disease. So there's a lot of stuff out there now that's worse, and we're not going out trying to corner the market on toilet paper. It's amazing the things people have done. It's astounding. I'm getting emails all the time from companies I've done business with. Northern Tool sent me an email. Every bank, Schwab sent me an email. We're doing everything we can. I've never been to a Schwab office. Well, not in like 20 years. What's going to happen? Are they afraid that their viruses are going to come sliding in over the internet? I have wireless. They can't sneak in through the cable. Come on, Northern Tool. Do you really think that you can help me? Where you're saying we're doing everything we can for you. Well, you want to do something for me? Start delivering to my house for nothing. They're not going to do that. They can't do anything to help me. And I'm not going to get sick at Northern Tool. Come on. I walk in, I buy my welding rods, I walk out. Come on. Why are you writing these ridiculous emails? It's all CYA stuff. It's like the politicians who are overreacting and trying to shut down schools where the disease really isn't transmitted. It's just to make themselves look good. And poor old Trump, ordinarily he doesn't care what people think, but this time he gave in and he's shutting off the airports. Of course he likes to prevent people from traveling, though. I have to admit, he gets off on that kind of thing. But it's all, a lot of this stuff is just politics. It's just public relations. And I must have received over a dozen emails from people that I will never see in person. I have a rental condominium, and there's a condo association. And the people who run the condo office, the association, sent me an email saying they were sealing their office. So if you got to send them a check or something, you got to go over there and slide it under the door in an envelope, which I guess they will immediately dip in Clorox. Come on! It's not the bubonic plague. Have you read about the bubonic plague? Have you ever looked at this thing? It came back time after time in Europe. People think it just showed up once and then went away because American high schools don't teach anything except, sexual perversion and I don't want to get into it. But the plague was not a one-time thing. It came back over and over. It would come and go away and come and go away. And it was so bad, it would wipe out 30% of the people in various areas. It was so bad, people got rich from the plague because so many of their neighbors died that they got their stuff. The people who were left behind got their stuff. You can look this up. And coronavirus gives you a dry cough and a fever in most cases. There was no dry cough and fever with the bubonic plague. If you got it, really good chance you were going to die. Surviving the plague was unusual. So I don't understand. Well, I thought about all these things, and I thought, why don't I use some mathematical tools to play around with the numbers that I've seen and see if I can kind of make my own off-the-cuff estimate of how many cases we're going to have in the future. So I'm going to erase this. I thought I would use a differential equation. I'll tell you right away, I'm not an epidemiologist, not a doctor, not a biologist. I'm just fooling around for fun on the internet. I'm just kind of doing this to vent. And I used to be a halfway physicist, and I took 7 or 8 semesters of calculus, but I don't remember much of it, and I've forgotten a lot of things. I've forgotten how to put equations together and stuff. So that's my warning. Take what I say with a grain of salt, which you probably do anyway if you're determined to believe in the plague. But I think I can come up with a simple differential equation that will kind of give us a good estimate. And you don't really need a differential equation, by the way. I mean, if you could look at the numbers now and the numbers a week ago, you can pretty well guess what the numbers are going to be like 3 months from now. But let's use a differential equation. Now, I'm going to use a very simple differential equation. I don't know what factors I'm leaving out. And this differential equation makes some assumptions before people start, screaming at me in the comments. It doesn't take into account what happens when the population gets saturated with the disease, because the disease is going to transmit at a certain rate, and then when everybody who's going to get it gets it, then that rate drops off and eventually goes to pretty much nothing. I can't take things into account like what people are doing, what their behaviors are. I'm not going to take the size of the population into account, any of that stuff. Those things shouldn't matter. I mean, at first, while the disease is going great guns, which is the only thing we're worried about, it should behave pretty uniformly, you would think. The equation I'm going to show you, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what they told me when I was studying differential equations. Differential equations, by the way, if you don't understand differential equations, you're not a scientist. You don't know anything about the way the world works. Differential equations to a scientist are like music and music theory to a musician. If you don't understand them, then you don't really know what you're doing. They explain the universe. So physicists, engineers have to learn these things. I don't know. I guess engineers do, because there's an awful lot of areas where you would need them. So what they told me when they were showing me how to do differential equations was a certain type of equation could be used to estimate the growth of bacteria in a petri dish, and it could also be used in the other direction. You can use it for an increasing number to determine how the number is going to increase, and you can use it for a decreasing number, say the half-life of a radioactive material. You can say, well, how little of this material is going to be left in the future. So how many bacteria, going up this way, how little radioactive material going this way. Same basic equation, works the same way. And it turns out it's a really simple thing. And I'll show it to you. So very simple, very simple. Here is A. That's what I chose because it's the first letter in the alphabet, first one I thought of. And it's the number of cases that have been diagnosed on planet Earth at a given time. So it's a function of time, okay? And it's going to look like this. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I think it's true. I mean, because a lot of things work this way. Yes. Okay. So, this is your time. This is a function. This up here is, the same A, but this is a number. This is a specific value of this. Functions are not numbers. Numbers are not well, actually, numbers are functions, but they're special cases. So anyway, this is a function. This is a number that's known for measurement. This X is E. It means Euler's number, and it's easier to write it this way. This is a notation that allows you to write everything on one line in big letters, so it's nice. So EXP means E2 K times this. Now, this K is just a constant that has to be determined from observation. You can't, if you knew what K was, you wouldn't have to do any of this stuff. You wouldn't have to do the equation. K is what you're trying to find out. It tells you how fast things change. And T, of course, is time. These are both numbers. These are not, well, you know what? I did that wrong. Because this is a general form, this T and that T are the same. This is the current time, and this is the original time, okay? So you find out what your initial number of infections is, and then you take the time when you made that measurement, and this is the time in the future that you're choosing. So what you want from all this is to be able to say, 10 days from now, 15 days from now, a year from now, what's A going to be? All right. So I started looking at this stuff on March the 5th, and today is the 14th. Now this number is a little high, and so is this one, but that should make the nervous Nellies happy because it makes their position look better. Okay? 9 days, TF, I'll tell you what, equals 9 days, and T0 equals 0. So you just plug all this stuff in and you solve for K. So using two known values, what you're going to do is, first you're going to do this. I'll tell you what, let's use F and 0, because those are the ones we know. This is a number, it's no longer a function. Okay, so that means, whoops, geez, man. Let's just do it. Let's just skip a step. Okay, so and there's your constant, and that is, because I just figured that out. I can just do that off the top of my head. Yeah, okay, sure. I use my calculator. So that's the number. What do we know about this number? Well, it's small. If this was the flu, this would be a much bigger number. Okay? So you plug this into that, and you should be able to generalize to the future. You take this equation, and you stick this number in here for K, and whatever interval you put in here, starting with March the 5th as T0, it should predict, maybe very badly, maybe I've missed something here, but it should predict what the total number of worldwide cases will be on a given day. And this should work, indefinitely, as long as the infection continues to be transmitted the same way that it's working now without some big change. Okay, so this is all going to be on the test. He said as he erased it. So I plugged in a few figures, and I'll show you what I got. Let's see. Here we go. I put these little things on my 7s because when you do math every day for 9 hours a day, you get to the point where you really don't want to mistake a 7. You don't want to mistake a 7 for a 1. You don't want to mistake a Z for a 2. So I always make Z's like this, and this is one of the. It makes you a casualty of physics when you start doing stuff like that. Okay, let's do another TF. Let's go into the future a little bit. 16, and this will be March the 21st, and the number is 223,173. Okay, so let's go a little farther into the future, and this will be now if I made a simple error, I'm still be close. 328, and that number is 332.40. Okay, so now let's go way out to 30, and I think that's April 4th, but I don't really know. You can find out for yourself. And that is 494.13. Okay, so let's go out to 60 and then 90. I have no idea what day that is. Sometime in June. 62 million. Here's where it gets good. And finally, 3 months from now. Now, what if there's a 1% death rate? Well, so that's assuming 1%, and they're projecting it's going to be lower than that it's going to drop off, and it probably will, because there's two interesting things. One thing is diseases like this tend to get less deadly as they progress. And another thing is we're gonna find more and more, as I said before, cases that aren't that severe. So I think that'll screw things up. Anyway, this is what we're looking at. Those are the deaths, okay? Millions and millions and millions and millions for the Spanish flu, millions and millions and millions for the Black Plague, a huge number for the flu. How many people are we losing every year in the United States from tobacco? Something like 1 million? People think tobacco causes cancer, but they don't realize it also causes strokes, and it causes heart attacks. So, also COPD. So, it's much worse than this figure. And this is global, Divide that by 20, so 7,500. So America, if this figure is anywhere near correct, we're talking somewhere like 5,000 to 15,000 people. Very bad, very sad. But this isn't the kind of thing that makes you stock up on toilet paper and buy ammunition. It's just not. So, I don't know if I'm right or not. I don't have any idea. Maybe I've forgotten something really basic about differential equations and I have no idea what I'm doing. But even if, as I said before, even if you don't know anything about calculus, you can just look at the Johns Hopkins map and look at the numbers, a week ago, and look at the numbers today, and look at the numbers for the flu, and you can see they are in no way comparable, and they never will be unless there's some mutation or something. So, let's just do that. Is this really what scares you when you consider the fact that the world has 7 billion people? Every day in New York City, 420 people die. Multiply that by 365. That's just people who die, from all causes. So I guess in conclusion, I do not plan to wet my pants. I do not plan to dig a bunker. I do not plan to buy 500 pounds of ramen noodles. I have a bidet. I don't care about the toilet paper problem. I live on a farm. I can go outside if I have to. I think people really need to calm down and get a grip on themselves. And you know what I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you exactly what you should do. Be clean, which you should always be. You shouldn't have to wait for a special occasion. Stop handling everything. Stop kissing everybody that you meet. Stay away from old people. Don't go near them. They can. You don't want to kill somebody by shaking their hand. Stay away from old people. Stay away from people who are already sick. And just relax. Things are going to be okay. And stop worrying about your kids because they're not going to catch it. This is what I predict, and I want to see how this pans out. So put your comments down below if you want. Anything snotty, I'll remove. And please, for goodness sake, make some effort to look at the numbers before you start criticizing. Don't say things like, I've had people say things like, it's much more contagious than the flu. Well, this whole thing is to prove that it's not more contagious than the flu. It's much less contagious. And don't say, well, it's infinitely more lethal than the flu. Well, the worst figure we've seen is 3%. And we've already mentioned that, and it looks like it's going to be less than 1%. That's what the doctors are telling us now. So maybe worse than the flu, but not that much worse. I mean, try to come up with something new. Say, well, here's a factor you should have put in your differential equation, or you forgot how differential equations work, which may well be true for all I know. Try to come up with something smart to say. And please don't involve Trump unless you're going to say he's a great guy. So that's all I got. I hope this soothes your nerves. And I guess I'll follow up on this if I'm alive a week or two from now. Bye.